Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We're going to be talking to you about report management using Apex. And this is using the report metadata API. I'm Carter Sartell, and I'm joined here with Hunter Dunbar. Okay. So our agenda for this afternoon, we're going to just give you a brief overview of Cervelo, the company that Hunter and I work for. We're going to jump into the problem that led us to build this solution. We're going to go over a couple of use cases and a brief demo of the issue. And then Hunter's going to jump over and do the solution and some limitations that you should take into consideration. So we'll follow that up with a demo of the solution that we built and a code review. Okay, so a little bit about Cervelo. We are a professional services firm. We're based out of Boston. That's where Hunter and I are from. We have offices in New York, Dallas, and London as well. We are a Salesforce consulting partner. And just, fun fact about us, we were recognized on the Inc. 5000 for the past 3 years, something that we're pretty proud of. Okay, so jumping over to the problems. So we work with a variety of clients. And one thing that we've noticed is that making field-level changes can really impact the reports that are in your system. So in your various Salesforce orgs, you can have hundreds to thousands of reports, depending on how large your organization is. If you make any field-level changes, you want to know what the impact to the reports and the users may be. So a couple of use cases that we have, these are some of the different changes that you may want to track using the report metadata API. So the first is any pick list value changes. So if your pick list value is referenced in a report filter and you go ahead and change that, it's going to then break the report. So it wouldn't be able to be run by a user until they updated that value. So in my use case, if you had a field called hobbies and a value called beekeeping, and you wanted to change that to some other fun hobby, it would then impact your reports that you have. Another scenario we have is deleting fields. So if you deleted a field, you may want to know what reports are referencing that field to know what the impact would be. If you're going to make any field type changes, so you're going to change from a pick list value to a multi-select pick list value, you would want to know what the impact is there. And then finally, tracking report types. So if you have custom report types set up in your org, you may want to know which ones are most frequently used to be able to determine maybe if you need to remove some or understand which ones are most frequently used. So from there, I'm going to turn it over to Hunter, and he's going to give us a demo of this problem.
Great. Okay, so open up Salesforce, and we'll take a look at a report that we're running. And so here I've got a report that's filtering opportunities, and we're summarizing by the hobbies that Carter was listing before, as well as stage. So you can see I've got hobbies equals beekeeping, horseback riding, farming, fishing, or hunting. And let's pretend that, sorry, I need to set this up. We're associating contacts to opportunities, and we want to know information about our contacts and how that might affect the revenue at certain stages of our opportunities. So let's say I want to change hunting, and I really just realized these are like pretty trailhead specific hobbies that we listed here. Let's say I want to trade hunting, and I'm feeling good after the keynote today, and I'm going to change that to hugs. I'll click Save. Now when I go to run my report again, I get a pick list value does not exist error. So if you're making metadata changes to your pickless values to any fields in your org, your reports are going to break and you're going to have issues for your users. So how do we solve this problem? When I first started unpacking this, you'd think that you'd be able to report on information like what reports are using what filters, and you can't. You can report on reports in Salesforce, so you can get the name of a report, you can get the description of a report, folder, system fields, and Workbench gives you the same thing. But you can't get actual information about the metadata of the report. So, what filters are used, what aggregations are used in the report, what columns show up in the report. Additionally, if we go in the App Exchange, there isn't really a tool to solve this problem. So we're going to have to build something custom. I put some links here. Definitely worth checking out Salesforce documentation on this. These slides will be available after the presentation today. But what we're going to take a look at is the reports namespace in Apex. In that namespace, there's a couple different objects and methods that we'll leverage. The key object is called report describe result. And the key methods that we're going to use are get report metadata. And then we can get detail columns from that metadata, and we can get filter values from that metadata. So that report describe result object, I've included a snippet of code that I executed in the developer console, and this is what prints out when we execute this. Basically what we're doing is we are passing a report ID into this describe report method. It's going to return a report describe result object. And then we can use this get report metadata method to get all of the metadata about the report, and that's printed out here below. So there's a ton of information here that we can extract using Apex. But what we're going to show in the demo today is how you would extract report filter details. So we can get, for every report filter, we can get the column, we can get the operator that's used, and we can get the value that's listed. So in the example I was showing before, the column would be hobbies, and the value would be beekeeping, horseback riding, etc. And in that code that I was showing, we're repeating that operation, or we're executing that operation against one report at a time. So this becomes an issue if we're going to try and summarize all of the reports in our org. We're going to need to repeat that operation over and over and over again. So that's why we need a batch job. Just a quick outline of the batch job that I'm going to be demoing here. It starts off with, we're just going to get every report in our org. So that's select ID developer name from report. Once we have that information, we'll use that describe report method to pull some metadata about the report. We'll use get report filters, get column, and get value to actually get the detail about the filters in the report. Once that's complete, we'll send an email with the report IDs and the names of the reports to an email address that I'll specify. So the idea here is it's not going to give you... it's going to save your admin some time when they're trying to update the reports. So the idea would be, I want to change a field. I'll enter my email address here. I'll run this batch job. It'll execute for some time, and then I'll at least have a list of reports that I know that I need to go in and update before making a field change. All right, so let's take a look at how this works. So this org hasn't upgraded to the new version of Lightning, but usually you'd see the Lightning experience would have the horizontally aligned tabs. I'm going to open the app launcher, click Report Finder, and I'll click this Report Finder tab. So what we're looking at here is just a Visualforce page that's been stylized with the Lightning design system. And I've got 3 different jobs that I can run from this page. The one that we're going to be looking at today is this report filter value job. But we could also we could generate information about all the report types that we're using in our system. We could generate information about which columns are used in which reports, which can be pretty helpful. So in this example we're talking about, you might want to know how your pick lists are used. You also might want to know what reports that column shows up in. So if we're using opportunity stage in a million different reports and we're going to change the values of opportunity stage, we want to know which reports are using that before we make that change. All right, so I'm going to enter report filter value of beekeeping. And a filter of hobbies. And I'll enter my email address. I'll click Generate Report Filter, and what this is going to do is it's going to pass this information to the controller, and the controller is going to call a batch job. Okay, so while that runs, I'm going to pull up the code for this. So I'm not going to show the controller because it's pretty simple. It's just taking information from the page and then passing it to this batch job. But what we're going to do in the batch job is initialize several variables. Depending on which button was pushed on the Visualforce page, we're going to execute a different job. And then this shows what I showed earlier. Basically, in the start portion of the batch job, we're just going to get every report in the system. Then we're going to iterate over every report in the system. And for each report, we're going to get all the filters, and then we're going to have to iterate over each of the filters. And so you can begin to see why the batch job is so necessary. If we were only doing this for 3 filters per report for 100 reports, it might not be a big deal, but many orgs have a lot more data than that you need to sift through. So I'm using that get report filters against the report metadata object. We're going to get the column value and the filter value, and then we're going to add the report ID if it qualifies to a string, and then we'll send that in an email. So hopefully I got an email. And so I'll get a list of report IDs and reports. There's only one report that qualifies in this situation. But when I take my string and I bring it over to Lightning, I can see my report. And so I know if I was going to update beekeeping, I would need to edit this report. So that's the solution in a nutshell. All this code will be available after the presentation today. And Carter and I will be available to answer any questions that anybody has. Here's my email address. And this deck will be updated with a link to the unmanaged package once it's made public after Dreamforce. So thanks, everyone.